kind of review a little bit about what Ray Goldhar has kind of walked us through, where we got to until now, and then share with you kind of what we learned in this process. We started this exercise a couple of months ago where we said, let's look at different segments of what OLME does and see if we can help to provide more resources and help to provide coaching, training, and improve the level of program that we offer. So we started with Israel trips. We have about 5,000 students that we're taking on trips every year from around the world to Israel. It's a huge piece of the Kiruv process. It's maybe the King Kong of the Kiruv process, but whatever you're going to call it, it's clearly very impactful. So we got a group together of people in Eretz Yisrael. We spent 3 days together, and we really started with a blank slate. We said, okay, what should an Israel trip be? What's called a successful Israel trip? And one thing that was interesting is that we kind of opened the floor to the possibility of metrics, no metrics, we should measure, we shouldn't measure, what's called a successful trip, and how would you come to it? What was interesting is that after 3 days of a lot of debate, if you can imagine, and then we spent another 2 days in Lakewood with another group to kind of flesh it out further and say okay, let's take more people from the field and really kind of get their opinions on it. And now we've broadened that group to you guys to really ask the question about what should we do to make Israel trips great? And then we got to the question of, how do we know if an Israel trip is really great? So we came up with this mission statement, kind of the neshama of the trip. And that was really powerful. It was this really amazing moment when everybody around the table said, yeah, that would be really amazing. If every student would walk off the trip and say, I didn't realize that Judaism could be so deep, meaningful, and relevant. And now that I do, I need to take ownership over my Jewish heritage and learn more. If that realization happened, that kind of aha moment, that I knew Judaism was kind of relevant, I went to Maimonides, I did some stuff, I saw some of the things about the depth of it, and I saw that it could be enjoyable, but I didn't realize it could be so much so that I feel a personal sense of responsibility, that something changes in the mind of the student, that they really feel, now I need to learn more, this is my responsibility. That's an amazing accomplishment of the Israel trip. And then we came to this realization. We said, how would we know? I can just imagine being, a few days into the trip, and you're I think they got it. I'm not sure if they got it. You go home afterwards, and your wife's looking at you, going how was it? I'm it was, I don't know. So we asked the Chaver, what would you say defines the success of the trip? And they said they came up with two metrics, and this was after a lot of debate. And they said there are two things that really stick out to us as a sign that there was this shift in thinking in the mind of the student. The first one is the short term, and that is just simple engagement after the trip. In the semester after the trip, if a student is doing 10 or more activities, that could be a one-on-one, it could be a Shabbos meal, it could be a class, it could be any kind of thing, but it's 10 or more activities that they stay significantly involved after the trip within 6 months, then we know that something happened, that they at least made the commitment to do more learning. They're pursuing it further. If they're not staying engaged on a basic level of at least 10 engagements, then something didn't connect in that way. They had a nice time, we connected. It was the most devastating experience for me as a guy, being on a trip, and then you go back and you're how come you're not answering my phone calls? That's not normal, right? What went wrong? I don't understand. That's number one. Number two, is a longer term goal is at the end of a year. That within 1 year we should see the students making a commitment to go on a next level trip. Level 2 trip, going to yeshiva, whichever one kind of makes sense for them at that point, but at least a level 2 trip. And the consensus was that 25% of the trip should be going on to level 2 trips within a year. So if you look back, those of you who have run trips, this is very important to us because we really wanted to take this from the field. Right, so we said, you tell us, look at the trip, they're oh my God, that trip was awesome, right? And it was really interesting, in the second round, after we already had this, when we did this, the initial reaction, particularly from the young professional group, there were a few people who were working with young professionals, they said, maybe that works for campus, 25%, but for us it doesn't work. And at the end of 2 days, something came up, and we said, they mentioned, that trip was really successful. I said, by the way, can you just do me a favor? Can you just run through your list now of those students? How many of them went on to a level 2 trip? It was over 25%. And every single one of the trips that seems to be what the Makarev calls, that one was successful, we did it, 25% of them are going on a level 2 trip within a year. So it seems from the field that these two metrics are really good guideposts in terms of letting us know that the aha moment happened on the trip. Now, part of the purpose of this exercise of the debate is that if there is a counter to metrics, it's if we get lost in the metrics. Right? We all understand that the trip is supposed to be this powerful key of experience. So we've spent a lot of the day really talking about what's the curriculum, what's the content of the trip, to be able to focus and really say, how do we understand the educational framework of the trip from the goal of, wow, I didn't realize Judaism could be so powerful, so deep, meaningful, and relevant. Now that I do, I need to take ownership over my Jewish heritage and learn more. And these are the 6 elements that breed the success of that kind of an aha moment. The rabbi, the community, help me? Belief, mitzvos, Shabbos, and learning yeshiva, yeah? Those are our 6 elements that seem to be the kind of successful components of a trip. If I get all 6, I'm very likely to have a group that 60% of them are going to stay engaged for the semester afterwards, and within a year I'm going to see 25% of them going on. So these are our guideposts. Like every other metric that we have, this is how we know that we're being successful. We're taking this in slow gradation. We're kind of like looking at it and seeing like, hey, maybe that's really helpful as a trip leader to be able to understand that this would be something that I can look at and understand if I'm being successful. We really are looking to you guys now, as the people who are going to be, most of you are going to be running trips this summer, to start implementing this framework and seeing if now keeping in mind the goal of the trip, the 6 elements, and now focusing with these kind of guideposts, does the trip become more effective? Does this framework enable you to be able to communicate more clearly your messaging? Does it give you the focus that you're moving across the trip with purpose and intentionality, that you're giving the students the experience? And we want to hear from you if, number 1, you found it useful, you were able to implement on the framework and the components of the trip, and number 2, if you feel like, yes, this is a successful trip, I now understand how to measure it, and I know how to be effective with the trip. So we really are looking to you for feedback, not only on today's seminar, but also on the entirety of the framework, because the plan is to take this now to Latin America, to France, to Russia, to all the different Mekabrim around the world, and start sharing with them what we found over here. So we're going through this process slowly. We hope that towards the middle of the summer, as each of you have trips, we're going to get feedback, and you're going to say, you know what? It was beautiful in theory sitting in Lakewood, New Jersey, but you know, when I got on the ground, I forgot about the 6 elements. Or, no, the 6 elements were like in my mind, I had it clear, I knew what I was trying to get to, and really helped frame for me the trip. So with that, we're going to move on to the next session, which is on recruitment. We have a panel discussion on recruitment, and then we're going to have dinner. Should we take 5 minutes? Can we do it? You're nervous about time?
Yeah, we can go.
Let's just go. Okay.
So I'm going to invite Keith up to stage pressure, Israel, and Paul. Me? Yeah, we speak on the security situation. And we're just going to bring 4 chairs. And